Thank you all for coming. So this is Women in Entrepreneurship. So I'm Mira, and I'm on the PR board, and we'll be starting off with some pre-media questions, and I'll open it up to the audience. So my first question is, can you tell us a little bit about yourselves and introduce yourself and a little yourselves and your businesses?
Sure.
Yeah,
So
go
I'll
ahead.
start. Hi everybody, my name is Irina Kurtsevaya. I am founder and CEO of Terralogia Sustainable Business Consulting. I'm actually a alumni of UC Davis, 2008. I studied managerial economics here. I really loved sustainable development. I worked in nonprofits while I was at UC Davis. And I also really always believed in entrepreneurship. So when I finished Davis, this is the story where I went and wasn't true to myself, but this story taught me to get back to the place that I really believed in myself. So I worked in accounting to start off after Davis, and I realized that that's not my passion and that's not my path. So after quitting a really big multinational company, I started helping entrepreneurs in Bay Area back in 2009 when the recession hit, which was a really interesting experience because everybody was starting businesses at that time. And so
that's a strange time to start business, but
right, yeah, but it worked. It worked. People started. That was the first wave, and then this is where we are at. You know, it's Bay Area is booming with entrepreneurs. So I was really lucky to get on that wave, and I've been helping entrepreneurs since then. I then went to get on an MBA path, and I finished my MBA at Holt International Business School. And I've been coaching startups and small businesses and social impact businesses for the past 3 years. And I've helped start 60 businesses since I've been working in the Bay Area. And just, at the end of 2018, I took the plunge and started my own company, my own consulting company. So I'm here to talk about that and help you guys figure out, your path towards what you would love to do and help you believe in yourselves. And I'm really passionate about actually specifically helping women businesses and social impact businesses.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Carmen Marsh, and I'm the CEO of Intelligenza. We are a women-owned business consulting in cybersecurity and enterprise agile transformations. So my background, I've been in information technology for 20 years now. Was one of the first women, not first, but one of the few women in technology, specifically to cybersecurity. 20 years ago, I remember at Stanford, I was one single female on a team of 200 information security engineers. So not much has changed. It's better, it's getting better, but we still have ways to go. And so one of the things that our company is doing, a lot of nonprofit events, but one of the things that I'm really proud of, it's a program called 100 Women in 100 Days, where we take 100 women and get them certified in cybersecurity certifications at no cost, and then we get them in touch with Intel, IBM, and some of the other large corporations to take them in as interns or like entry-level positions. So we definitely creating that pipeline. We get them trained, and then we get them into cybersecurity field where we are lacking. First of all, there's a skill shortage. So by I think 2021, we're going to have 3 or 4 million, up to 4 million open jobs in cybersecurity that we won't be able to fill. So big talent shortage that we have. And then of all the open positions we have today, there's only 11% currently in cybersecurity are women. All the rest are male. Yeah, that work in those jobs. So yeah, there's a lot that we are not only providing services in cyber risk management, but also we have all these nonprofit programs where we try to encourage women to get in, help them get trained into the field.
Awesome. My name's Angelica. I am a super recent graduate of UC Davis, and during my time at Davis, I did basically the other side of entrepreneurship, so venture capital and accelerator. How can I help people make businesses and hopefully make a quick buck off of it? So I worked at 500 Startups, which is the largest seed stage venture capital firm in the world, And then I was the director of Plasma, which is a on-campus entrepreneurship program which helps accelerate companies founded by Davis students specifically. So I feel like I do know a good bit about entrepreneurship. When I was at I built basically the largest proprietary research system for seed stage investment companies that's in the world that allows for so it allows geopolitical events to be tracked to startup trends across the world, working with information off of investments in every continent except for Antarctica, which is pretty fun. So hopefully I'll be able to help out with questions about that type of stuff.
So my name's Laura. I am the co-founder of a nonprofit called Startup SAC. I don't know if there's anyone in the room who's heard of Startup SAC, but we are helping to connect the entrepreneurial ecosystem in the Sacramento region with the resources and education they need to be successful. So that was not a direct career path to do that. I graduated from Santa Clara University with a business degree with an emphasis in finance. And I didn't really know exactly what I wanted to do when I was in college, but I thought, hey, you know, a numbers degree makes me seem legit, so I'm gonna go with that. But I should have known, because the class that I enjoyed most was one that you took your senior year, where you took all the disciplines, finance, accounting, marketing, management, and you worked together on a team, on a project to solve that. And I loved that class, and everyone else hated it. But out of college, I had a variety of jobs in a variety of disciplines, primarily in the electronics industry, but everything from accounting and finance to running a manufacturing operation to technical sales to product management and customer support. But about 15 years ago, I ended up working for a startup for the first time that was in the satellite communications business. I was like employee number 10 and the first management employee that they hired. I worked there for 5 years, and during that time, the business grew to 25 million, and we had what we call a successful exit. And if you're not familiar with that terminology, someone really liked our company and bought it, and anyone who owns stock got money. So after that, I was like hooked on working for startups. I loved the pace, how quickly things change, being able to have my fingers in every pie, because startups are so scrappy that there isn't necessarily an accounting department, a manufacturing department, a shipping department. But that was what was fun for me, was to have a new challenge to solve every day. So after that, I moved to the Sacramento area, and I started hanging out with a nonprofit called SARTA whose mission was to grow the technology industry sector in the Sacramento region. And my reasons for hanging out with them were that I thought I would meet the founder of the next startup company that I would work with. And that was that same time frame that you started. That was 2008. And although a lot of businesses were starting, they weren't exactly hiring executive talent for their companies. So what ended up happening is SARTA offered me a job to launch a new program for them, specifically aimed at medtech startups. I worked for them for 7 years and learned that I really loved this job of working with founders and helping them figure out what they need to do, for their company. So unfortunately, as things go, SARTA closed the doors in 2015, and then that's when my business partner, Jeff Bennett, and I launched Startup SAC.
Great, thank you all for sharing. Those were very interesting career paths. So my next question is going to be, what are your biggest challenges that you have faced, and does it differ in terms of like being a woman, and how have you like encountered and like tackled it?
Sure.
Yeah, any one of you can go.
Okay, I think for me it was always, since I first started in the accounting firm, my hours were very ridiculous. I was working like 90, 100 hours a week, anywhere between 60 to 90 to 100 hours a week. And I found that very unhealthy. And I saw people, and especially women in that situation, and I was like, well, how are we supposed to have families and have work-life balance? So I think that was my number one challenge, and then the other one was even the connection between finding a job and knowing what you like and knowing what you want, and connecting your degree to make it relevant to the job that you're looking for. Because I think once you're just getting out of a college or university, then you may not necessarily know what you want to do. So that was a big challenge for me, to go in and really figure out, like, what do I really want to do, and going from here's what society's telling you to do to, like, I'm gonna really take the leap of faith and trust my own heart and follow my own gut. So and that's been a challenge for since I got out of Davis, and I'm glad that I've been following my path. It's definitely been difficult because there's always the pull towards, like, you have to make money and you have to do the traditional job, and you have to be successful and climb the career ladder. And then there's also the part where, like, is this really what I want to be doing? And it's scary to follow what you want. So my path has taken me back and forth from the working world to entrepreneurship until I finally took the plunge. So to me, that's the biggest part of my story, is really staying true to myself and really figuring out what is it that's going to help you feel happy, fulfilled, and balanced in your life. And another challenge was actually being recognized at work. Being a woman at work and recognized at work. I think there's still a lot of education and consciousness that needs to happen in the workplace, because women started working relatively recently, being in the workplace around men, and I think men still need to be educated on what women are, and what we need, and what our needs are, and how we differ from men in the workplace. So I've definitely faced, challenges of being recognized and taken seriously, and men looking at me like I'm not their equal, or my role isn't as important as theirs, or being downplayed for my achievements, or not even recognized at all. So I've definitely seen those challenges for sure in all of my roles. And another thing I'm going to say is challenges with management. What I notice is there's a lack of proper management structures. And I've worked in nonprofits, in multinational firms, medium-sized firms, and I see a pattern that the management systems just simply don't work very well. Like the top management, and there's a little bit of a disconnect between the top management and the actual people doing the job. And most of the time what happens is the management does something that isn't correct, and then all of the problems and challenges fall onto the people, and the people who are doing the work are blamed, but there's never that connection. So those are three things that I would encourage you to look out for and watch out, and definitely be aware of that exists in the career world, and it still exists, and you will have to face that. So my suggestion is to stay true to yourself. Find people in your teams that you can work well with, and when you're looking for jobs, look for the team. Look for people that you like and people who will support you, versus necessarily the role or the pay, because you will be miserable if you are somewhere where, let's say it's a high-end job and a great name, but if you can't work with the people and the team isn't supportive, you will be miserable and you'll quit. So really search out when you do the research, and when you go to events and interviews. Really ask people for coffee dates. Talk about how is it like to work in your company, things like that, so that you're more aware of what kind of people you'll be working with.
So would you say that's a good way to find out what management's like in a company? Because it's sometimes it's hard to get to that, to evaluate how is management. I mean, if how would you go about that?
I think
sometimes it's hard to know. That's what I'm saying. How would you know?
It's hard to know. I think the best way that I found is just knowing that the people you'll be working around will be supportive, and that you like the teams that you're in. But the top-down structure, you really don't have much control of that. So as long as you have that supportive environment, then you know that you can work well with your manager, and direct manager or direct teammates, then you'll be much better off, I think, than if you just go for, you know, oh, this is a cool sounding job, or this is a high pay, or, you know, this is a great name. That's what I found. What about you? What do you think?
Yeah, that's probably the best way is figure out the culture of the company, right? Because that has a lot to do with how, you know, try to figure out how, by talking, mostly just talking to people and figure out if they are agreeing with your thought process, right? If they align with your, just who you are, and yeah, that's probably the best way. I don't think there's sometimes you don't know what the management is like until you're there and you're working with them, so.
Well, I would suggest some other ways you can find out about that is go look on Reddit and Quora. You know, what are people saying?
Oh, Glassdoor, isn't it
people,
Glassdoor?
Glassdoor may have that as well. Also, you know, search on LinkedIn for people who used to work there and reach out to them to
that's
see
really
if they
smart.
can tell you something about what's going on.
That's a good idea. Yeah, because sometimes I've been in the company or worked with a company where I had no idea what it was like until I got there. And even the first few months were like great. It was like a honeymoon. It was like, oh, wonderful. 6 months down the line, it was just, it was horrible. I mean, management was just, you know, the way they were treating employees, and it was not something that I would recommend anybody. That company was not it. And like I said, you don't know sometimes what you're getting into. You know, the job is great, the pay is great, the position's good. When you get there, it's a whole other story.
Correct.
I throw out the smaller the company is, the more impact the culture is going to have on you directly. Like, don't go work for a startup company if you're not a self-starter. You know, if you are always looking for someone to approve everything you're going to do in advance. You know, but also startup companies can sometimes have really bad cultures, especially for women. So that's something to look out for as well.
Yeah, as far as my challenges, I think the biggest challenge for me personally and my partner Paula, who's my business partner, when we started our company, we both came from a corporate world, work in, you know, a lot of large companies, medium, small, and we always had teams. So we always work with teams, and when you go on your own and you just the two of you, and then you're about to, you know, start, and there's so much to do, and you only have so many hours in a day, it becomes very stressful because everything has to be done, and you don't have unlimited amount of time because you have to get going, you have to start building clients, you know, client base, you have to do so many different things. So that was very hard, I think, at first, to figure out what to focus on. You knew you had to do all these things, and you couldn't afford to fall behind on any of those because you have to keep working, right? So wearing multiple hats. So the best way Paul and I managed that was to engage our, you know, build a lot of different connections and get almost like a, and I heard that in the other speech or talk in the other room, is to build your board of directors. So somebody who wants to help you and advise you. You know, you can't pay them yet because you're a startup, obviously. So you can't hire. If you had money, you would hire all these people and they would all do the part of what needs to be done. But build an advisory board and work with them, and they will give you advice on even the shortcuts. Sometimes they will know something you don't know, and it will help you get there faster where you're supposed to be. So networking and just knowing who you can talk to and ask advice is big when you're a startup.
Yeah. Just going off of that, that has been probably one of the most helpful things that I could have done for my career. Like, all of the opportunities I have received have come from pretty aggressive and pretty consistent networking, showing up at offices, showing up at events, like making the time to reach out, take those phone calls. But and I think that one of the big growths for me has been understanding or getting over the idea that people don't want to talk to me. So like finding people that it's outrageous that they would ever answer my email and being like, oh, I'll write them an email, you know, like read a book and then email the author. Like going through those processes of actually reaching out to people that are amazingly ambitious and have done amazing things is so important, because there's a lot you can offer as a young person to, ask questions, and people want to give back and people want to like kind of promote that circle. So as long as you're willing to like really understand what makes someone special and let them know that you understand that, 9 times out of 10 they're gonna reply with something amazing, and that I think is really important.
Yeah, just getting over that,
Yeah.
fear of not, or being stood up, or not being, that, I think that's really important, to just say, I'll do it, I'll talk to them. All they can do is say no, and that's okay. We'll talk to somebody else then, right? You go and talk to the next person, but you always fear, like, oh no, they never, this person's so successful,
Yes.
this person's so wonderful, they'll never talk to me. You just have to get over that and just do it. Be brave and go out there, ask questions, and ask people for help. That's another thing. It's I personally I always felt, okay, I can do this, I can do all of this, but no, actually you can't, because you don't have enough time in a day, and it's okay to ask for help. Just ask for help, and they can say no, but a lot of people will say yes and they'll help.
Yeah, it's okay not to know stuff. It's
Yeah.
okay. It's okay not to know stuff, and it's okay to ask questions. That's one of the biggest lessons, one of the biggest helpful things that I've embraced is asking questions and like, hey,
A
just
lot
being
of
bold enough to come up to people and, hey, I need your help, or how do you do this?
Yeah, I add something on my challenges. First, I want to let all of you know that women have been fighting for a long time to get where we are today, and there's still a lot more to do. There's a special that I saw on PBS that tells like what women did in the 60s and 70s. That was before I got out of school, and I think you guys should be aware of that. You should know things like even in the 70s, maybe even into the 80s, that a woman could not get a credit card in her own name, that it had to be in her husband's name if she had a husband. They could not get small business loans and those sorts of things. Those things are not that far back. But what I want to encourage you in, there are still situations, a lot of situations where there's unequal pay. There's situations where men are recognized over women, even though women do some of the same work. But one way to change those things is to just get closer together between men and women in understanding how we tick. And the answer is not to quote act like a man, because then people think you're a bitch. I'm sorry, that's how it is. But women tend to be more timid, less likely to demand something from a boss. Something that really changed my life in the early 80s when I was just out of college was I subscribed to something called Working Women's Magazine, and I don't know if that even still exists, but there was an article in there about how when women are unhappy about their salaries, that they will job shop. They will go find another job to get better pay, whereas men would go in, talk to the boss, and say, hey, I need a raise, and this is why, or I deserve a raise, and this is why. And that really impacted me, and so I made a point from then going forward to always ask for what I thought I was worth. And for the most part, I had good success with that. So that was just something that I would encourage you to do, is to speak up for yourself. The other thing is, women are more likely to believe less about their skills and expertise, and men believe more than their actual level of skills and expertise. So a woman looks at a job description, and if she can't check the box on every requirement, she won't apply. A man looks at that job description, they meet half the requirements, they will apply. And a lot of times they might get the job. So I would just encourage you to take a little more risk in those relationships that you have with bosses or potential employers. The other thing I'll add, I didn't have that much problem as a woman, even though I was working in a male-dominated field, electronics. But I think the reason behind that is that the company I was working for, which at the time was a Fortune 500 company, had a lot of women in senior executive positions. So I think when you look at who is running the company, and if there are women in those positions, then it's more likely that that company is going to be a better fit for women. So.
Very true. Now, I'm going to add a quick thing too, what you were saying about women not always, feel like they can check all, if they don't check all the boxes on the job application or whatever, they say, oh no, I can go for this job. But I think I was listening to a podcast and it really resonated with me because there is conditioning that has been done, and we are, as women, I think that way, that everything has to be perfect. And apparently we have been conditioned all this year that the girls, women, have to be perfect and men have to be brave. And those are kind of the two thoughts that have been sort of ingrained in us for hundreds of years, right? So we're fighting that mindset now too. And it's a natural thing. We just have to know that that's the case, and then be brave and be, and not let the perfect be the enemy of the good. That's another thing.
Yeah.
It's just think of it. I mean, you are good enough, so don't put yourself down. You own it. Know what you own it.
Yeah.
What you know and what you stand for, and don't let that mindset take over, right? Because it's easy for that to happen.
Yeah, and you guys will also learn on the job. So that's another thing that I've learned is to tackle that mindset, because I know it can be hard to get from, okay, here's what you probably should change your mindset to actually changing it, So think of it as you will learn on any job. So you shouldn't be an expert before you start. So people know that, your managers know that, the trainers will know that. So hopefully that's another tip to help you feel less the need to know everything or be perfect.
Yeah. Kind of just to give my 2 cents on it. So I've definitely had a very interesting evolution of my experience as a woman in business. So when I started, I didn't really think about it, and I thought that most of these things were gone. And I had kind of these continual moments where I realized hey, this is kind of different, and this is something worth thinking about. That, as embarrassing as it is to recount, there was one moment where I really realized wow, representation is crazy disproportionate. And I was in this meeting with General Motors, and the chief research department team had come out. We were meeting, and we had lunch. We came back in for our meeting, and we all got sandwiches. And I was starting to feel really sick, and I was super stressed out. And I was just sitting through the meeting, and then all of a sudden I was oh no, this is not going to work. I stand up, run to the bathroom, and I just throw up everywhere. And it is terrible. And I'm throwing up, and I'm I didn't have time to close the stall door behind me, and I was God, I don't want to move my head at all. I was is there anyone in the office right now, possibly higher up in a scale than me, that could come in right now and see what I'm doing? And I went through everyone, nope. Nobody in my team and decision-making status was a woman. And I was just had that moment where I was yeah, I'm not going to close the stall, but also what is going on? And that was a moment. It was crazy to think about. So you do get the female bathroom sanctuary. It's a nice ad.
But that's the only good
yes,
thing about it.
Only good thing. Take your pros and your cons. Yeah. But that was my moment, and that was crazy. And that's in venture capital, which is supposed to be super forward, and it's not always like that, I also definitely had to think about it doesn't feel like there are barriers, but anytime that you're the only or all the same is probably a time that you should check in with yourself. So whether it's in the bathroom and realizing you're the only woman, or when I found myself in teams that were across teams but somehow all women, that's normally something to kind of check in with and realize I definitely had moments where I realized I was in teams that was wow, so these are all the people you feel you can take extra time out of their day to do this side project that's pretty administrative, or these are projects that maybe aren't getting the attention that they should. So I kind of try to be cognizant about that on both sides. I do have another advice. And then also, I think that, I read this study just a month ago or so that was really impactful. It was actually an editorial by Nicholas Kristof, and he was talking about male-female relationships and work. And they were citing a study which studied all these male mentors and tracked what characteristics make guys good mentors. And one of the things they said was having daughters, which was such a weird thing, but I looked through and I had that same mental recount, And I realized every single one of the mentors or bosses who has ever taken the time of day to realize like what I'm interested in or sit down with me has a daughter and talks to me about their daughter. So like not that that's an amazing networking school or like skill to like look up on Facebook or anything, but it was really interesting, and it kind of like made me think about my expectation going into work is like this is a normal place to do work, and it made me have that moment. I'd really recommend reading the article and the concerns people were facing, where it was like work isn't sexual, and work and having these like mentoring or like meetings or meeting after work with your boss should be clearly not sexual. And I think that that's an important thing, that there's not much as women we can do other than find people that recognize work as work, but something that I needed to be cognizant about. And then for everyone has been talking about stepping up and being brave and being okay with doing your thing. I like to tell myself that like to act like I am a rich white boy and my dad on a yacht already has it figured out, and then do what I'm gonna do. So when I'm applying for a job, I'm like, oh, my dad's got it. And that's not the reality, but it's a really helpful thing to kind of get yourself out there and push yourself to do more things.
Thank you. That was very insightful. I'm sure all of us have. Oh, sorry. I'm sorry. Do you want to go ahead?
No.
Oh yeah. I'm sure all of us have something to take from it. Due to a time crunch, I'm just going to open up questions to the audience right now. Does anyone have any questions?
Yeah, and I just want to say, I feel like we haven't talked about entrepreneurship much.
Okay.
We've talked a lot
Yeah.
about working
Yeah.
for other companies.
Mm-hmm.
And I just want to add that who here wants to start their own business?
Nice.
So you will have a lot of freedom to create the culture at your company and to make it a place where women can succeed. But you will probably run into still some discrimination around funding from investors if you need investor funding.
And be okay with rejection, because I can't tell you how many times you get rejected, and you just have to stand up. Let's move on to the next. And it's a constant thing. So you have to build that resilience and say, I have a good idea, I believe in it, I'm passionate, I will make it, and you have to keep going. No matter how many times you get rejected, you just have to build that tolerance, and you need to know that before you get into being an entrepreneur, because it can bury you if you don't have that mindset. And you say, oh, it's just going to be easy, or it's going to be a lot of work. But no, there are actually a lot of rejections everywhere, no matter what you're trying to do. But knowing that, going into that and say, okay, I know it's going to be hard, and I'm not going to let it affect me. I'm going to keep going my path, and I'm going to keep working on it. Have that grit. It's really important.
Yeah, I think also for me it was fear. It was fear of not making it and not knowing what I'm doing and not believing in myself. And that has always followed me, throughout, even now that I'm already the CEO of my own company, there's a lot of fear, and there's a lot of like making decisions and like, am I doing the right thing? And it's just about trusting yourself and surrounding yourself with people that you can work really well with, and surrounding yourself with people that you like, and seek help. And definitely coach, like I have a coach, and I'm a business coach, but I have a coach. And I believe in that, because we all need help and we all can learn from others, and there's that having that external perspective is priceless. And I cannot emphasize that enough. And also for me in my journey, it was been about building up a lot of relevant experience. So taking those maybe unofficial leaps of faith and like working for startups that you don't get paid at, but maybe now I have like stake in the business, right? Or like doing things where I'll learn from the job, but it's not going to pay me well enough, but I'm going to take the job because I need the experience, or I want to learn about the product, or I want to learn about the startup culture. And I've done that after finishing my MBA, and I even did my MBA with an emphasis on soft skills and entrepreneurship and teamwork, which is I highly recommend, because in the workplace, soft skills is everything, and working in the team is everything. And that's where I learned that building a team for myself, where I'm at now, that's been the best knowledge. Is now that I'm building a team, I know that I need to be working with people that I get along with, that like me, that respect me, and it's just a natural, organic flow. Like people are calling me to want to work with me. I don't even have to do it. Like people find me now, and that's just so cool. But like when I worked in the company that I worked right before that I started, it was all men. It was all men, and it was it was painful because I was doing all the work and I wasn't recognized. And not that I wasn't recognized, but I feel like sometimes I didn't get the same treatment. And but at the same time, that experience has taught me so much, and I'm so grateful to the company and to the people that I worked with, because those challenges teach you so much. And also, there was so much alignment with the company and the people that I worked with. So going back to the idea of working with men and women in a team, it's all about alignment. Like, you'll feel it. Once the values are aligned, once your goals are aligned, once your strategies are aligned, like, you'll feel connected to the people that you work with. And even though I was surrounded by mostly men, it was still like, it gave me a lot of drive, a lot of excitement. Like, I knew what I was doing. You have to have passion for what you're doing. Without passion for your product or service that you're trying to bring to the market, I kind of don't even want to say, like, it's not gonna happen. Like, I really believe in businesses that really have passion for what they're doing versus just like, I'm here to make money. No, I want to help people who have passion. Like, I'm not here to help businesses who are just in it to make money. The people that I worked with had stories where they've struggled and they've overcome humongous challenges in their own lives, and now they're in business, you know. And that's like the most rewarding thing I've gotten from my journey. And I think that without the passion, once you guys are starting the business, really think about what you really want to do, what kind of changes you want to see in the world, and what kind of skills you want to bring to life. Because everybody has an innate skill and an innate strength, and you really want to develop that and give that to the world, and like really look at the gift that you have and make a business around it.
And don't let naysayers stop you from doing it, because I think especially I think for all of you here that want to start business, I think there's going to be a lot of people, even your family, is going to say, why don't you just find a job and go work for a corporation? They will try to squish that idea for you, because that's, everybody does, and that's the way you should do it. And you know, there's going to be a lot of that. You know, so you just, if you really know what you want and you want to do it. You're going to have to ignore that and still go ahead and do it, even though it's, you know, you have your sisters and brothers and family from everywhere, right? They'll tell you, no, just, you know, you graduate from college, you go, and now just go find a job. That's really what you're going to hear from a lot of people. But that a desire to have your own business is not going to die. You may make a decision right after college now to say, okay, I'm going to go and find a job and work for a company. But that's never going to die, because if you're truly an entrepreneur inside of you and you have that idea, it will come back to you, and it's not going to die ever. So whether you do it now and you know, and you learn and go the hard way, right? Yes. And you go take a step and you're learning along the way, and you are maybe 5 years or 10 years ahead, or you're going to do it again later on in life, right? So it's really a choice. But I think if you have it in you, you will do it in your life at some point in life. It's going to be there. So it's just a decision to be made when.
Yeah, and things are changing too. It's not your parents' world anymore. There's some statistic, like in the next 5 years, they expect something like 50% of the workforce to be freelancers. Yeah. That's anecdotal, but it's a high number. Yeah. And so people creating their own jobs instead of going to work for companies.
The only other thing I'd like to add to the conversation about startups is, so I've gotten the opportunity to look through, to like do pretty hard data analysis on 2,000 investments, and then I interview around 600 startup teams a year. And what I've kind of seen is that there is this huge push, and there's so much more acceptance for women going into really historically underrepresented fields, so heavy STEM. But there is also this weird moment that I think women are facing right now, where what about companies that are strongly female issues, and what do we do about that? So there have been huge companies that have come out with like pumping things, with menstruation related products, with beauty products that have had huge financial success. But that's definitely something that I would encourage people to look at both sides. Don't feel like you have to do a female focused company, but definitely understand that that is something that's welcome, and you are going to get the super weird comments. I've interviewed like so many panty companies, and then all the guy partners are like, oh, well, my wife, and I'm like, oh, I mean, I can tell you that too, but so there are going to be moments, but I would encourage people to embrace either direction. I think they're both really good opportunities.
Okay, great. I think we are right on time, so thank you all for coming. Thank you for sharing your discussion.
We don't have time for one question?
Yeah, let's do one question.
One
then.
question.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Should we like put all down and the first one goes up? Gets the question.
Everyone yell at me.
Is there a break after this?
There's the keynote session.
What time does that start?
2:30.
2:30.
Yeah, we have 15
Okay.
Well, I'll see and answer
Okay,
questions.
let's, yeah.
Totally.
Hi, I'm Farisha. So my question is, as creating your own business can be overwhelming, what were the first steps you guys took into starting up that process?
For me, it was the type of service we were going to offer, whether it's a product or service. You need to know, you can kind of really be clear what your objective is. What is it that we're going to be offering? I think that's one thing, because you can be like this everywhere, right? Because especially if you, like when my partner and I started business, we have so much experience in so many different industries. So we were like, okay, we could do this, and that, but no, what are we going to focus on? You know, and it did actually it took us about 6 months, I think, before we figured it out. We actually, on our website, we had like 20 different type of services. And so the comment came back like, okay, yeah, you do all that? We actually can, but you know, you have to be more focused on that. I think it's a higher success for you to kick it off and start gaining the client base that way.
Yeah, I agree. You have to have an idea first. You have to know what you want to do, and it doesn't have to be crystal clear, but you have to have a focus. That's really helpful. Much better than if like, oh, I know I want to do this, but I don't know what it is. Take a little bit of time to develop that. Also, again, relevant experience. Know your strengths. Know yourself. In my case, I've already had a lot of clients that I knew would work with me. And having a lot of people that were coming to help me. So like having just an idea of like who your team could possibly be, and having like that test mindset, iterative mindset. Nothing is ever set in stone. So you test, try, learn from the market, fail, succeed, move forward. You know, don't ever think of like, oh, I know exactly. You know, it's always a learning process, and having that mindset really helped me too, because I was never. That broke down the barrier of being perfect, actually, the idea of starting a business. And yeah, so the testing the market, putting out, A/B tests, things like that, so that you aren't investing a lot of time and money into something that isn't going to be a product that people will buy.
My experience was a little bit different. I'm a fairly high risk taker. And when the nonprofit I was working for shut down, I still wanted to do that same work, but there wasn't anybody to do it there. So I'm like, well, I'm going to try and do this on my own for the next year and see what happens, see if I can pay my bills, and it worked out. So it is, if you might wait too long, like if you're too risk averse, but all new businesses there's a high risk associated. A lot of businesses fail. But that doesn't mean you shouldn't give it a try.
Yeah. So if you see a problem that you want to solve, if you see a big problem you want to solve, that's a good thing to go after. Yeah.
What were the other questions?
Yeah. One more question.
I have. Do you want to go first? No, you can. Okay. I have a question on the topic that you all kind of emphasize about the stigma in working as a woman in the startup industry. I wanted to focus on how did you counter that stigma, and how do you not let that affect you, and what is your how do you seek encouragement and motivation to stand up to those kind of stigmas?
My fast thing for the last two parts of your question, so how do you think about yourself and how do you stand up for yourself, is I encourage people to not try to assess if they're qualified for things, to just do them. Mm-hmm. It is really mentally hard to try to weigh out if you're good enough for this. Just do it. Like, do you think you're wildly underqualified for it, and you might actually end up getting them. I don't know if anyone else wants to.
I always think of like what's the worst thing can happen. I mean, if you want to do it and you know what you can do, just do it, and try to think of, just put everything aside and say, I know myself, I know what I can do, and I will do it.
Yeah. I definitely, yeah,
that's
Don't believe the hype.
Yeah.
So, if there's a stigma against you, there shouldn't be. So believe that you have what it takes to be successful, and stand up to it when it comes up. Or if you're working for a company that doesn't value women, there's plenty of companies that do. Go work for them.
Yeah.
I think, recognizing things as not cool was a big step. So realizing like, wow, that was definitely not a dinner table conversation for a work meeting, or like, oh wow, like that definitely wouldn't have happened if X, Y, and Z was different about like me. And kind of recognizing that, and then seeing how you can have your different experience be beneficial to the team, I think is really important. So there's a lot of strength in having a different perspective at the table.
Yeah, I think also to add to that, I stand for what's right and what's human right. I don't think of men, women. I just think what's right, and I'm just like, this is justice. This is justified. I'm justified. I know this is my right, and I go for it. And if you guys are gonna learn from me being bold and like stubborn, better for you. You know, I will always like that. So I like that. So I recommend that.
I think there's one more question.
I know usually with entrepreneurship, one of the biggest challenges is with legal issues like patents and copyrights. Do you have any advice how to go down that road?
I think you should seek the advice of an attorney, and there's a lot of attorneys who will, especially, how many of you are still students?
Everybody.
Yeah. So there's a lot of attorneys who will chat with you, kind of, off the books. There's also a lot of workshops and things of that nature around legal help in one form or another, whether it's forming your company, partner agreements, patents and other intellectual property protection. That there's a lot of information out there, and you should be seeking advice.
There's a lot of free help. There's a lot of free help. I have a lot of resources. You guys can come to me, and there's also, you can research free stuff. I know USF legal clinic. There's a lot of universities that have free legal clinics. Berkeley has it. USF has it. I think probably Davis also has it. There's also lots of entrepreneurship free resources in Bay Area that I've actually personally worked with, that they provide specifically free resources, free help, free advice. So before you even go start paying for something, look for the free stuff.
Are you guys aware of the Big Bang program that happens at UC Davis? They have free workshops, and a couple of them are legal. Plus, there's an event next Friday, an all-day innovation conference, where that would be a great place to bring some of these questions and learn more about entrepreneurship.
I'll be there.
I'll be there.
Oh, cool. And trade. Always trade. Ask. Don't be afraid to ask for free or trade, and explain your situation.
Maybe ask a very quick question.
Yeah.
So if you did not come from a stubborn background, how do you train your muscle to do that?
Well, I think if you guys are thinking of being an entrepreneur, I think it's one of the characteristics of an entrepreneur.
Yeah. You have to be a risk taker. You have to be stubborn. Or at least build that resilience. You have to build it, and you have to slowly say every time, like we were talking about, a rejection or anything that's not. If you get obstacles, you cannot that impact you in a highway. You have to move it out of the way. There's always another way. There's always a plan B. If you go in here and oh no, it's not going. You try a couple times. No, okay, we'll go this way. Let's keep going. It's important you keep going.
But I think mentors can help you with that, and practicing in groups that you feel more comfortable with, doing practice pitches in a group that makes you feel good, and then increasingly risking it a little bit more. I think everyone should go to therapy, because we all have baggage from our everyone came from a dysfunctional family. I'm sorry.
A dysfunctional work environment.
That's my one regret in life, is that I went to therapy in my 40s, and I wish I had in my 20s. So.
That's actually really good advice.
And since we're talking on therapy, UC Davis actually offers affiliated program with Life Health, and you can go to their website and enter UCD counseling. I've been taking that for winter, and it helped a lot. It's free. You would see an $80 payment upfront, but if you put in that coupon code, it's totally free, and you can take it on a weekly basis.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it will help.
The only other thing I would do is I'm a psychology major. I read this really helpful study, and it's been proven that women are more likely to do ambitious things or show that grit and tenacity when things are phrased as what would you recommend for your friend to do, which is really interesting, but like really helpful to me. So when I'm not sure if I should like call up again about that, whatever, if you force yourself to think, would I recommend that my little sister call again? I'd be like, oh yeah, absolutely, you totally deserve this. And then I'm like, oh my god, I have to. You know, so that's a good way to trick yourself.
Yeah. It's kind of like being your own best friend. In that
Yeah,
sense.
yeah. So stepping out of yourself and then tapping into that caring thing, be like, oh god, myself.
Okay, thank you so much for the great discussion.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.